So this is going to be a quick video on how to paint our monochromatic landscapes. Before we get started, I just want to point out a couple of things about brushes. You can see I'm using a round brush. It's got round bristles on the tip. You can choose a round or a flat. Those are the two basic brush types that if you have one or the other or both, you can paint just about anything. When it comes to the brushes, we want to make sure that we don't leave them sitting in water, because if it has a wooden handle, it's going to absorb water, the wood handle will swell, and it's going to loosen up this metal part that attaches the bristles to the handle. So don't leave your brushes sitting in water. Put them across the top of your container when not in use. And then lastly, when you're finished with your brushes, you want to make sure you clean them up really well. Rinse them out in your water here, run them under clean water in the sink across the hall, and then don't be afraid to use brush soap. That looks like this little cake shape, and you just rub it around there. You can brush it on your palm, make sure that there's no color coming out, and once there's no color, you know that your brush is good and clean. So you can see my landscape drawn here. We're looking for, in terms of craftsmanship, three main points. The first point is that we want your pencil lines to be extremely faint or not visible at all, first of all. So you can see I've drawn my pencil lines very lightly on my landscape. We want the mountains and the different areas to be distinct, not based on lines, but on edges, the differences in values. The second criteria that we're going to be evaluating our paintings on is based on how distinct your values are. We're going to want distinct areas of value with our darkest in the foreground, and then as we move into the distant, each value is going to get progressively lighter. We want those values to be distinct. They should be pretty clear. And the third thing that we're looking for in critiquing these in terms of craftsmanship is a nice smooth wash. So we want each area to be a distinct value, and we don't want to see brush marks. We want those to be smooth areas of value. You'll notice also that I've given myself a margin. It's about a 1/4 inch around this. You'll have a 6-inch by 8-inch piece of paper, and you want to give yourself a bit of a margin, whether it's a 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch, 3/8. 1/2 inch is probably getting a little big, but that margin allows you to handle the painting without getting your fingers on the paint. So let's get started. You're going to have your choice between black, and I decided that I'll let you use blue, because as you look at landscapes in life, atmospheric perspective causes things to become bluish with distance. So I'm going to use blue. This is a tempera paint. I'm sorry, I'm going to use black. This is a tempera paint. The blue that we have in class is an acrylic. They're both water soluble. One thing you guys might remember from your previous painting experience is the tendency to take way too much paint. All you need is like a penny size, a couple of drops of paint in your palette. Remember that we want our foreground to be the darkest. You can either work from the background to the foreground or vice versa. I'm going to go background to foreground because things in the distance are overlapped by things in the foreground. So you'll notice from a technique standpoint, we want to pull the paint into another well or container. We want to make sure that we have enough to cover the area that we want to work with, that we want to fill. I should have a test strip. A test strip is a little piece of paper that you can use to test your value. So that's a little darker than I want it to be, so I'm going to add just a little bit more water. I'll grab a test strip really quick. Test strip is just a scrap of paper that's the same type of paper that you're going to be using. So that's still pretty dark. You can see where it pools up, it's darker than there. So I want to go lighter still. So rather than adding water to this, I'm going to pull some of this watered down paint over here and add water to that. See how that looks. That's significantly lighter. I'm going to go with something like that. I'm going to add a little more water. So I'm going to work from the foreground, or the background rather, to the foreground. And we'll work on this in the second semester with one of our first drawings, but you'll notice I'm trying to be very careful not to go over my pencil line. And then the other trick is to maintain a wet edge. You see all along this area that I've painted, I'm keeping a wet edge. So I'm going to go pretty quickly here in the interest of time, a little quicker than I recommend you guys going. You can do this painting more than once. Welcome to try it over. So you can see I can get a fairly even wash all the way across. And if there's a little variety in the sky, that can be a good thing. Give a sense of haziness. You'll notice the paper is starting to curl. The fibers on this top side of the paper are expanding, pushing toward the other side. So it's curling the other way. Now I'm getting up to where I'm going to have my first mountain range in the distance. If I hold this vertically, I can keep that wet edge always at the bottom of the area that I'm painting. If I get a little lighter as I move to the bottom, that can actually be a good thing. A lot of times you'll see that kind of a gradation from the top down. You oftentimes see gradation, dark towards the top and lighter towards the bottom. Let's see how that looks. Not bad. So then we want to mix our first mountain range in the distance. We want that to be a little darker. And what that sky was. Again, I'm working much faster than I would recommend you guys do, and I can test my color on the test strip. It's a little more distinct than I'm thinking. It's a little better. Now, these are not watercolor paints. Watercolors will dissolve a little bit more easily. Tempera will work just fine for us. So I'm going to go with this value. Now, because it's a darker value, I can go over what I painted previously. And ideally, you would want to have each layer be dry before you paint the next layer. Otherwise, if it's wet, your new layer can bleed into the previous one. So now I'm working with this flat on the paper, on the table. And we go up to our next edge. I guess really I'm less concerned about seeing your brush strokes as I am about having distinct values. So don't worry about that. Some of your regular brush strokes can actually look like texture in the mountain range too. So there you go. Here's our next one. And we would just keep going. This would be light. This would be a little bit darker than that one. This landform would be darker than that one. And these two I think I would paint the same as this one. And then for my water, this is meant to look like a river draining into a large lake or reservoir. That I'm going to paint a similar color to what the sky is, because the sky is often reflected in bodies of water. So there you have it, our monochromatic landscape painting. When I'm finished painting, make sure you clean your brush out really well so there's no color coming out of it. Reshape the bristles. Put it back in the container with the bristles up, not down so they get smushed, but up. That should do it. Good luck.